follows an extract from my book Letters from the Broom Cupboard, available from Amazon. Dear reader, you must excuse me. I meant to introduce you properly to some of my pupils, but before I could recover from the tangent I'd gone off on, there was a knock at the music room door. I imagine that you'll get to know quite a few of my pupils, as the flow of absenteeism allows me to tell you. However, I don't think you'll ever get to know Mrs. Simpkins. She has a will-o'-the-wisp personality that's quite impossible to pin down. I know all about Mr. Simpkins, but such knowledge is too graphic and hardly relevant to these letters. I'd hate to convey to you, dear reader, the burden of knowledge that I have in this area. All that I can tell you in good conscience is that I suspect she has a secret penchant for dry sherry and a tendency to insist upon playing music about 4 grades too difficult for her. Her performance isn't improved by the fact that she has a clinical inability to play more than 2 consecutive notes in a steady, consistent tempo. The final nail in the coffin of hope for anything like a musical performance is driven home when I bear testimony to her unique method of manicure. She possesses talons of preposterous proportions, each of which taper into a nicotine-stained, downward-curved point. I have to admit that I worry for her safety, and I begin each week's lesson with horrific premonitions of her leaving with her fingers bleeding, while I am left to pick out fragments of bony debris from between the keys of my piano. So far we've lived to tell the tale, but I'm not complacent and I remain vigilant at all times. Maybe it's the precarious addition of dry sherry that really gives me cause for concern, because other pupils with manicure issues don't keep me awake at night. Annabelle, a young lady in her late teens, sports extreme nail extensions. Instead of tapering into curls, the tips lie straight and true, ending in a harsh, flat edge. I did once suggest that she needed to trim these extremities for the sake of her piano technique. Her dominant sense of fashion and grooming was highly offended by the suggestion, and I didn't dare venture the topic again. I didn't think she was emotionally strong enough to entertain the thought a second time. Mercifully, when her exam date was looming, her hands took on a more human form for a brief period of time. I've already introduced young Gregory to you, or at least I've introduced you to his internal gastronomic combustion system. I'll grant you that this hardly describes the lad, but it expresses him perfectly. I suspect that Gregory was something of a surprise to his parents, born to them very late on in their married life. I get the idea that they've remained surprised ever since. There's no doubt that they dote on their darling, but they convey the impression that they've raised him at arm's length and held him by the tips of their fingers while they remain quite unsure of what to do with him. He's a bundle of physical and emotional complexities that are like a taut elastic band which could pling off in any direction without a second of warning. Nevertheless, he's an endearing chap that I can't help but like. He's a man of few words, but when he does speak, his accent is a throwback from the potteries during the time of the Industrial Revolution. When asked to play something, he'll peer at me dispassionately through his thick spectacle lenses and say, "It's reet tricky that. I canna play it out like that." In terms of lesson content, it's difficult to know where to begin. Each half hour is a by-the-seat-of-your-pants affair, as there's no knowing what will occur. Because his eyesight is so poor, I scan and enlarge any music I intend to attempt. But even when he can see the music, it's hit and miss if he'll be able to read it. At times he can make good progress, but that's only when the moon and Jupiter are in alignment and if the wind is in the right direction. I really wish that I hadn't just chosen that analogy. This is Gregory I'm talking about. Generally speaking, the traditional classical approach isn't the way forward for Gregory. In many ways, it's quite a pleasant time, as the pressure of achievement really isn't an issue here. Nobody is pushing for him to attain musical brilliance, and his parents are just happy for him to have a good time and knock himself out on somebody else's piano for 30 minutes. I just have to hope that creative inspiration will meet me in the music room each week and see what transpires. The key to getting through the lesson is to keep bringing the changes. We'll spend a few minutes at the piano experimenting with combinations of dynamics, pitch and rhythm. Then we'll move to the desk to trace over some treble clefs and colour code some note names before hopping back to the piano to try out some note groupings and attempt some listen and response exercises. At the end of 30 minutes, Gregory returns to his confused parents in a state of euphoria, usually, and I retire to a darkened room. Gratefully yours. For the full collection of Letters from the Broom Cupboard, available from Amazon in paperback or as an ebook, follow the links in the cards in the description box or find details on my website at sharonbill.com. Thanks for listening.